It is really something that you zoomed in on this patent because there is so much here. This is an absolutely fascinating window into who Les was. And part of the reason for that is that basically, and I presented this one way to my wife, and she presented it back to me in another, which, as usual, she saw something that I think is really, really significant. Basically, what I said is you don't even have to read between the lines here to realize that what he's doing can be interpreted as being like completely in contradiction with everything that he's known for. And here's what I mean by that. Um, as we know, um, the original log was basically an embodiment of this idea that, hey, we don't need no stinking big hollow cavity to, wiggle around and do all that stuff. Just the sound of a string stretched over a fairly, somewhat inert support system with a magnetic pickup reading the string, trying not to interfere with the string's behavior, but reading the string's behavior at different points, sounds like a very good thing. I mean, certainly it worked for lap steels and whatever, but he said, I think this sound could have a future, and this sound did in fact have a huge future. So one of the things that comes up maybe a couple of times in the patent is him saying that the purpose of this is to eliminate the somewhat metallic sound of existing instruments, and that it definitely will do, because in order to get this thing to work at all, the string is going to need to give up some energy to the coil to move it. The process of making it work becomes really, really interesting. But in its basic sense, if you're going to get any sound out of the thing, that coil is going to have to move up and down a little bit in relation to the string vibrations. And in order to do that, it's going to have to sit on some kind of material that gives a little bit. It's going to have to be a certain hardness of hard rubber. It's going to be, I don't know exactly what the material is, but it's going to have to give just a little bit. And what that's going to do is reduce the infamous sustain that his previous instruments were known for. The thing's going to go more than it is because of the way the energy necessarily is absorbed to drive this pickup slash bridge device. Like, first of all, I'm saying I'm reading this and it seems like he's going back on, really the basic principle that got him the kind of notoriety that he got in the electric guitar world. And she said, well, that's because it shows that, he is quite capable of thinking very broadly and very creatively, and in fact is not hamstrung by even his own dogma. So this thing that Les Paul is onto here is actually, it's a very, very cool thing, and it's something that hasn't quite been done. This idea of a solid body that has some intrinsic resilience that gives a certain shape to the envelope. But if we get it right, it's going to be a really cool thing. And this whole business about, reigniting this lost idea of Mr. Polfus, is really a great thing. With the existing Alnico magnets of the time, I don't think he would have gotten very much signal at all, which is not something that bothered him a terrible amount, because we have this whole business of the Les Paul recording and the low impedance output and those pickups, which we'll push off to the side for the moment. But basically nowadays, with NEOs and with really, really efficient magnetic structures, which is, my stock in trade is trying to make magnetic architectures more efficient for what it is that you're really trying to do in a given situation. We could probably get enough signal, and the magnetic circuits that we want to look at are not so much magnetic circuits for conventional guitar pickups, although it won't be far from that, but we want to look at basically speakers, because this is what this thing is now is it's a speaker, except instead of the cone, you are moving this driver on the yoke and that kind of thing, even though it's not going to wiggle very much.